I've been asked to give you this short brief on the mitigation assistant team, and it's certainly my honor to do that. Let me start here and get this rolling. Most of you have seen this slide somewhere before. This is the track of the storm through Tuscaloosa, an aerial shot, and then a lot closer aerial shot through Tuscaloosa. And of course, the highlight, the governor's vision, building a safer Alabama. Let me tell you about the objectives in the MAT program. The Mitigation Assistant Team program conducts forensics, engineering, analysis to determine the causes of building future and building better in the future for success. They look to answer two questions. Can we be safer next time? And if yes, how? I'm not going to read through this, but these two booklets right here, Design and Construction Guidance for Community Safe Rooms, as well as Taking Shelter from the Storm. These are on some of the tables in the back as well as outside. Please access those and get a copy. Who studies the impacts for these storms? The Mitigation Assistance Team is made up of these individuals. Folks from FEMA headquarters, the regional staff, the technical assistance that comes in the form of contractors and subject matter experts. They include architects, engineers, building code experts, meteorologists, as you heard earlier, and emergency managers. You'll also see here research universities, such as the University of Alabama and Texas Tech, who have all had a good part of this. Safe Room Initiative here in Alabama. Since the 1990s, Alabama and FEMA partnered together to start a program for Safer Alabama. They have residential safe rooms, community safe rooms, and of course ICC 500, which is shelters for public schools. This is kind of the background of what's happened here in Alabama since 1990. In residential building performance, both new and old buildings exhibited damage from these storms. The direct impacts of tornadoes, as well as the inflow data. And inflow is the straight line winds being pulled towards the center or the vortex of the tornado. Newer construction from the 1990s and on showed better structural performance in that inflow data. However, they still exhibited destruction when directly impacted by some of these severe storms. The older construction, pre-1990s, there was little to no engineering against these high winds. There were what they called brittle failures, which became structural failures. Many residents were fortunate to survive in the hardened but non-compliant shelters and refuge areas. This is a refuge area in the basement of a house. It was actually under the porch. This area did not have a structural door to it. However, it did protect the family during that tornado. These are a couple refuge areas in residential buildings. As you can see, the first is in Tuscaloosa here, and the second one is in Athens. These individuals constructed these shelters on their own. The shelters performed very well for this particular event. But it's important to note that the doors were not 329 or 320 compliant. This is an interesting safe room that was built with FEMA money. As you can see, it's attached to the front of the house. It provided easy access, and in this particular case, we noticed that there was a wheelchair ramp with the house. It provided easy access into the safe room. This was used during the storms, although the house did not take a direct hit. In Crescent Ridge, Tuscaloosa, this safe room was located just north of the major tornado track that passed through Tuscaloosa. This safe room was funded through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and the safe room was constructed of a precast concrete and with reinforcement. The lid of the structure was also reinforced concrete with a steel latch and locking system. The safe room was used during the storm, and the hatch was blocked by a fallen tree, and the neighbors had to cut the tree apart in order to get the occupants out of the safe room, but they were protected. This is an interesting slide. It shows Joplin, Missouri. This is the square that you see in increased size right here. And if you look a little closer, you'll see the safe room in the middle of all this destruction. So it's a pretty good example, aerial shot. There's tough choices when investigating shelters. A resident who builds some type of safe room must make choices about money. They make choices about how to protect their family. They make investments in the hardened building elements and the components, but they don't always make the investment in the hardened door. In small residential safe rooms, doors become a critical area. They constitute a large amount of the cost. If the door is lost or damaged, the occupants in the hardened area are exposed to the wind and the flying debris. If not constructed or tested to meet the FEMA and ICC criteria, the occupants remain at a significant risk. It's important to note here that no wood door has ever passed the debris impact test. And you'll see outside in the hallway an example of the debris impact test that Dr. Kiesling's group has set up out there. If you get a chance to visit that, please do. These are a couple shots of compliant and non-compliant doors. If you look at the left here, you see a steel door. It's got the 3 hinges as well as the 3 latches. If you look at the right, this is an untested door assembly. It had the multiple hinges, but it only had 1 latch. If you look closely at the refrigerator in the back, you can see all the impact areas from the flying debris. This is a great example of why it's important to have the impact-resistant door. You heard earlier a little discussion about the school performance, and I want to highlight that a little bit. Few of the impacted schools were able to survive without significant damage, as you heard. I believe the figure was 17 or 18 schools affected throughout Alabama. Although newer codes consider schools critical facilities, the older codes did not. So these buildings are not designed for the additional hazard resistance. Most of these buildings perform no better than the typical commercial construction. Most schools had a tornado plan, but they did not have a safe room or a shelter. They used what was called a refuge area. The refuge area was never assessed for its vulnerabilities to wind or the wind-borne debris. We're going to take a look at some of these. The first is a shot of Hackleburg and the elementary school. Most of the elementary school was destroyed. The good news on this, there were no students in the school at the time. The tornado on March 2000 that you've heard about, Enterprise, Alabama, took the lives of 8 kids. There was no shelter in that school. Again, these are some of the shots of the Enterprise school. Protecting students from tornadoes. Again, most of the schools have some type of plan. Teachers and students, they know where to go. They practice these plans, and they drill several times during the year. But there is more work that needs to be done. Have the refuge areas been evaluated for what the vulnerabilities are? Are the refuge areas hardened, or are they actually safe rooms? You've heard earlier about addressing the shelter-in-place dilemma. Should you close the school, send the kids home, or should you keep them there? Those schools that have the hardened safe rooms, that's an easy question to answer.